The 1750 to 1900 time period was not all about revolutions and the independence of America. It was a time period when the most important thing ever happened, the greatest thing to ever happen to mankind, the God-given gift of humanity, the event that changed everything we know to be true. Would you like to know what it was? Well, too bad. We gotta roll the intro. Well, in all seriousness, the Industrial Revolution was really important for the development of world events and has allowed us to create this video and show it to you guys. But anyway, today we're going to talk about a broader topic, the time period of 1750 to 1900. It was a very interesting time, filled with industrialization, revolutions, imperialism, and global migrations. So first, let's talk about industry. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain around 1760. It was a transition to new manufacturing processes as agrarian rural societies became industrialized and urban. The Industrial Revolution started in Britain because of their Enlightenment values, their available resources, their navigable rivers, financial innovations, and population growth. The Industrial Revolution allowed Great Britain to expand itself as an empire, and they became very wealthy due to its semi-factory style of producing things. Okay, so now we're going to talk about several inventions that helped steam the Industrial Revolution, no pun intended. Some of these include the steam engine by James Watt, the cotton gin by Eli Whitney, the spinning jenny by James Hargreaves, and the flying shuttle by James Kay. Furthermore, other inventions that allowed for easier and more efficient ways to communicate and transport items include the telegraph and the railroad. So from Great Britain, the Industrial Revolution spread to many other parts of the world. And although Britain tried to keep its technological developments in Britain, people like Samuel Slater memorized the way British machinery worked, and he brought this technology to the United States. In fact, Samuel Slater is considered the father of the American Industrial Revolution. After Slater, industry in the United States followed a similar path, with railroads, telegraphs, and other inventions that all added to the industry. Many other countries also followed with their own industries, but Britain and the United States had a head start ahead of them. Another good example of the impact industry can have on a country is what happened to Japan with the Meiji Restoration. After Japan saw the Black Ships, or American metal warships, they decided to go full state to a major global power. And one of the major effects of the Industrial Revolution was the dependency effect, where colonized nations were dependent on their industrialized counterparts for general commodities and provided them with raw materials in order to produce them. This was also part of the mercantilist policies that industrialized nations enforced. Finally, the Industrial Revolution had a huge effect on the world between 1750 and 1900. Alright, so now let's talk about the revolutions. During this time period, there were many revolutions going on. Well, me from an alternate timeline, I just want to tell you that this is a different kind of revolution. While the Industrial Revolution revolutionized the way we produce things and brought along technological and economic advancements, these type of revolutions brought along great political changes. For example, there was the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and all the Latin American revolutions. Wait, I think I'm missing one. Dan, can you please remind me of this one? Oh right, the American Revolution. Thanks, Dan. Okay, let's go to the idea circle. The American Revolution was a time when the British colonies in America rebelled against the British monarchy. It lasted from 1775 till 1783. It all started with the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War, between the French and the British over territory in North America. The Indians sided with the French, while the colonists of the 13 British colonies sided with the British. The war went badly for the British at first, until 1757, when they began borrowing huge sums of money in order to pour men and naval forces into the war effort. The British ended up winning the war and obtaining a great amount of land in North America, although they were depleted economically, which proved to be detrimental. In order to pay off this debt from the war, the British Parliament imposed new taxes on the British colonies. Thus, the colonists were inspired by the Enlightenment ideals of Voltaire, Rousseau, and Locke, and then grew extremely angry. Soon, an all-out war began between the British and their colonies, and in the end, the Patriots defeated the Loyalists, thanks to the courage and cleverness of George Washington. The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, and America was finally free. Okay, now it's time to talk about the French Revolution. The French Revolution was the result of heavy taxation of the French Third Estate, or the peasantry. The price of bread arose, and the peasantry overthrew the monarchy. Afterwards, Napoleon came to power and took over France, establishing himself as emperor. His actions caused a rise in nationalism in Europe, as he used his power to conquer other areas surrounding France. Finally, after Napoleon was overthrown in the Battle of Waterloo, a democratic republic was established in France. Although not before long, the Congress of Vienna was formed as ambassadors of European states, led by Austrian statesman Clemens Wenzel von Metternich, in order to establish a new balance of power in Europe, which would prevent imperialism within Europe, such as the Napoleonic Empire, and maintain the peace between the great empires. I'm going to redo this French one. Okay. Ready?
Whoa.
I started audio.
What, did you already talk about the French Revolution?
audio? Yeah.
Did you already talk about the French Revolution? Oh.
No, not
Act
yet.
1, Scene 5.
Okay, so now it's time to talk about the French Revolution. The French Revolution was the result of heavy taxation of the French Third Estate, or the peasantry. The French peasants were inspired by the American Revolution and Enlightenment ideals of life, liberty, and property, and they used this fuel to help them overthrow the monarchy. Afterwards, however, Napoleon Bonaparte easily came into power and took over France, establishing himself as emperor. His actions caused a rise in nationalism, as he used his power to conquer other areas surrounding France. Finally, after Napoleon was overthrown in the Battle of Waterloo, a democratic republic was established in France. But not for long, the Congress of Vienna was formed as ambassadors of European states, led by Austrian statesman von Metternich, was established in order to establish a new balance of power in Europe, which would prevent imperialism within Europe, such as the Napoleonic Empire, and maintain the peace between the great powers. So one of the most impressive revolutions is the Haitian Revolution, led by Toussaint Louverture. The Haitian Revolution was a slave revolt against the French. So one of the most impressive revolutions is the Haitian Revolution, led by Toussaint Louverture. The Haitian Revolution was a slave revolt against the French. It felt like an impossible feat, and it surprised the whole entire world when it happened. The French planned to use Haiti as a base to conquer the rest of the Americas, but once they lost it, they abandoned all hope in the Americas, and therefore they had to sell the Louisiana Territory to the United States. So, in order for these revolutions to occur, there needed to be someone to revolt from. Well, not exactly me from another timeline. Although Britain had the biggest empire, they did not rule the entire world. On the contrary, during this time, most of Europe had imperialistic ideals. Imperialism was a major trend in this time period, and it caused huge changes in economic and political power, which ended up being concentrated wherever the imperialistic countries were, mainly in Europe. So for those who don't know what imperialism is, it is a nation's control of another land, whether physically, economically, or politically. Before the Industrial Revolution, Europe did business with Asia and Africa through existing trade and political networks. So, what happened after? Well, this peaceful trading system turned into a European escapade for control over the regions. With superior weaponry and powerful iron warships, Western Europe now controlled a third of the world's land surface. Okay, so what is nationalism? Nationalism is expressing one's pride in their country. So after Napoleon's conquest had brought along a rise of nationalism, leaders such as Otto von Bismarck, Giuseppe Mazzini, Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Camillo de Cavour were inspired to unify their countries. So Germany had been fragmented fragmented into over 300 separate states since the Middle Ages, had weakened the power of the German empires. Thus, in 1871, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck united all of these separate states under one rule. He fought against Prussia and won the war to unite Germany. On the other hand, the movement to unite Italy into one cultural and political entity was known as the Risorgimento, meaning resurgent. Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi, though failed in their attempt to create an Italy united by democracy. However, it was the aristocratic politician named Camillo de Cavour who finally united Italy under the crown of Sardinia. Another nationalist movement was the Zionist movement. This was a movement to create a Jewish homeland in the state of Palestine. It arose in the late 19th century due to anti-Semitic acts that were taking place in Europe. The Jews finally established Israel as a Jewish state later in history, after World War II, as the Balfour Declaration was signed. Okay, so let's move on to China and the Opium War. The Opium War were two separate conflicts between the Qing dynasty in China and the British Empire. Both wars were the climax of disputes and tensions over trade and diplomatic relations between the two powers. As Britain began selling opium to China, the Chinese people began getting addicted to this drug. However, the Chinese government forbid the British from selling opium into China, and they began to close off trading ports. The British were infuriated, and thus causing the Opium War. After the British won, the Treaty of Nanking was signed, and these trading posts were now open and under British rule. European dominance proved to be beneficial once again. So in order to get back to their former selves, China implied many reforms, such as the Taiping Rebellion, the Self-Strengthening Movement, and the Boxer Rebellion. In the Middle East, in the Ottoman Empire, they attempted to industrialize after they began to decline in a reform known as the Tanzimat reforms.